you. Thank you for the beautiful music. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So glad you're able to be here with us today. Well, I have a very special story to share with you. This one comes from some sacred texts that go back almost 3,000 years, called the Upanishads. And yeah, it's beautiful. So let me begin. There was a young boy, 12 years old. His name was Shivetiku. And he grew up in a family that was full of people who had been trained in the spiritual teachings. They were considered wise, not just because they had studied, but because they really knew and lived the sacred scriptures. And so when Shivetiku was 12 years old, his father told him, "My boy, it is time for you now to go find your spiritual teacher. Go study the sacred texts, all that there is to know and learn. And then, when your studies are complete, return here to your family." So Shivetiku went forth, and he found his spiritual teacher. For 12 years, he studied every sacred text, every application, everything that he could possibly learn. For years, he absorbed that, he soaked it in, he teased it out. And finally, at the age of 24, he returned home. Now his father could tell that he had studied much, had learned much. But the father also saw in his son a great arrogance, a conceitedness. And he said to his boy, "Shivetiku, my son, clearly you applied yourself in your study. You have learned much. You know deeply our sacred scriptures. But tell me this. Do you know what it is to hear the unhearable? To perceive the imperceivable? To know the unknowable?" Shivetiku knew this not. He said, Why no, father, I don't understand. How can you possibly know the unknowable?" His father said, "Then, son, you must return to your teacher. There is more yet for you to learn." Shivetiku says, "But father, my teacher taught me all that there was to know. If he knew this, surely I would have been taught. Father, you teach me." His father says to Shivetiku, "My son, some would tell you that all that is, it came from nothing. That in the beginning, nothing was. But how is that possible? How could this cosmos, how could all that is come from nothing? No. In the beginning, there was only being. And that being wanted to create. And all that is, the cosmos, this land, you, me, we are all created of this being. Thou, Shivetiku, thou art that." Well, Shivetiku knew right away that he clearly did not know all there was to know. He was humbled. And he asked his father, "Father, teach me more. Teach me more." So his father says to Shivetiku, "My son, go to the banyan tree and bring me back its fruit." The fruit of the banyan tree is much like a fig. So Shivetiku goes and he gets a fig, brings it back to his father, and his father says, "Now, son, cut open this fruit and tell me what you see." So Shvetiku cuts open the fruit, and he says, "Father, I see many seeds, infinitely small, so many." "Yes, my son. Now cut open a seed and tell me, what do you see?" So Shvetiku cuts open the seed, and he tells his father, "I see nothing." Ah. Therein is the imperceivable. But I tell you, Shvetiku, that it is that which is imperceivable, that subtle essence in that tiny seed, from which grows that great banyan tree. And it is that same subtle essence in that seed, that same imperceivableness that is in the great cosmos, that is in all that is created, all that ever has been, all that ever will be, and you and in me. That subtle essence, Shvetiku, thou art that. All of us here, we are all seekers like Shvetiku. We all are on a spiritual journey, wanting to learn more, wanting to grow in our spiritual life, in our path, in our community. We're all students, including myself. And like Shvetiku, no matter how much wisdom we acquire, no matter how much we learn and study, there's always more to know. There's always more to experience, to perceive. There's always a deeper level in the spiritual life. And sometimes as I'm studying and learning and practicing, I come across a story that really rings true for me. This was one of those stories, and so I needed to share it with you. Our theme this month is Seeds of Truth, and so this story really felt applicable on a number of levels, because there are many seeds of truth through this story that connect very parallel ways with the teachings we have in the Centers for Spiritual Living. We believe that there is one spirit, one being, from which all has come to be. And we believe that that spirit is our source, each one of us, created from that divine. We believe that we are beautiful expressions of that spirit, just as the fig and the banyan tree, just as Shvetiku and his father. But even more than that, our belief goes beyond this idea that spirit created us and then kind of took a step back and just let things run along. We believe that spirit continues to indwell, continues to live within all that is, in you and in me. Thou art that. The story really captured me. The subtle essence, that subtle essence from which a seed grows into a great tree. Thou art that. The imperceivable that created the galaxies, the constellations, the vastness that we can't even yet imagine. Thou art that. That great beingness from which all is created. Thou art that. And that's not to say that each one of us is the wholeness of the divine, right? We know that. We know we're not God in all that God is. And yet, we are full expressions of Spirit, the whole of us, our whole beingness, not just this body. We weren't just created and set in motion, but every cell is alive. It lives in Spirit, imbued and permeated in the sacred. Every moment, every breath. Wow, right? Wow. It's amazing. Everything that is. The all and the small. As small as a fig seed and even smaller. Here in CSO, we use seeds for analogies a lot. And probably the most common way that we think of seeds in an analogy or a metaphor is when we're talking about our beliefs. We talk about our beliefs as seeds that we plant. And that the types of beliefs we have really shape our lives and how we experience our lives. So that if my belief is that humanity is broken, is wounded, is unkind, then the way that I experience my life on a day-to-day level is going to be very different than if my belief is that humanity is whole, is sacred, is an inherent expression of the divine. And we teach that we need to be very conscious about our beliefs because it does impact the way we experience our lives, to choose carefully the seeds of belief that we plant for ourselves. Because we've talked about that a lot in our teaching, I want to explore another way to think about the seed as a metaphor in our spiritual life. The wise father in this story, he teaches us many things. He teaches us that the seed itself is created in spirit, in beingness. He teaches us that that seed is imbued with the subtle essence of the divine. And what I would like to propose that we play with and explore a little bit right now is the idea that each one of us is that seed. That you and I are that sacred seed created in the divine and imbued with that subtle essence. We are permeated in the sacred. And it is the Spirit's presence in that seed, it is that subtle essence the Father speaks of, that allows that seed to grow into the great banyan tree. It doesn't grow of its own accord. It grows in the subtle essence of Spirit. So if you are a seed, and I'm a seed, and we are bearers of that sacredness, that subtle essence of the divine. What is the divine growing in us? What is the banyan tree we are becoming? This is the new year, yes? This is our first Sunday together in 2018. It's traditionally a time for us to make resolutions, to try to set some new process in motion for our lives, to intention set. It's very popular in Centers for Spiritual Living. What I'd like to propose for you this year is to think instead about the seed that you are, about this essence of the divine you carry within you. And what is the beautiful tree that you are growing into? What is it that you and I can do to allow that life of spirit that is within us to express as fully as possible into the magnificence that we are becoming. Spirit and that tiny fig seed has the vision of the great banyan tree, knows all that is needed for it to be nurtured and sustained, to grow in its absolute fullness. And so too does Spirit know for each one of us. Intimately created we are by the divine. What we need to be nurtured, sustained, to grow into the great magnificence that we are capable of. We don't need to know what that tree ultimately looks like. The seed doesn't need to know the banyan tree it is to become. What matters for the seed is the livingness of spirit within it that sustains it in every step of the way in its growing. You and I, we don't need to know the destination. We can set intentions. We can have hopes. We can have visions. I don't know for you, but every time I've ever tried to imagine what my life is going to look like even a year from now, never been right. So I don't try for that so much. But it's a very powerful practice in every moment and every day to try to live the fullness of the expression that is spirit within. Because whether I know what a year from now looks like or not, whether I know what the tree of my life looks like or not, it is growing. It is becoming. It is expressing in and through each one of us. How can we open into that, into the trust of the moment, knowing that we are sustained by this subtle essence, that we don't have to be able to perceive the great tree to be able to perceive the spirit within. It was a perfect meditation song. It is not I, but the spirit within who does these great things. It is the spirit within that grows me. It is the spirit within that sustains me and each one of us. So I propose this year that we allow to see ourselves as the seed, to see ourselves as the bearers of the divine, and to open to that movement within, not needing to know what it will look like later, but resting now in this moment as the seed that is growing. For thou, as Shvetasu's father so wisely knew, thou art that. I invite you into prayer with me.